Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Handing the Shame Back. My name's Gloria Masters, and as you know, I'm the host of this show, which is 100% dedicated to our fabulous child sexual abuse survivors out there in Aotearoa and across the world. Police report that up to 1 in 3 of us have experienced some form of child sexual abuse. So it's quite a big endemic out there, guys, and bringing these shows to you is a small way of finding some support and finding some resource for you. Some of what you hear today may resonate with you, and it may actually encourage you to step forward and find your voice with a friend or in writing or whatever works. So, as with all shows, I always have a trigger warning, and we do that because no one wants you to be traumatized. This can be viewed anytime you wish. It's free to all of you. So you just go back to the channel and click on it. If you do get triggered, please go to the show notes below and you'll be guided there for some help and resource. So in the meantime, my pleasure to introduce to you Neil Harding. And Neil Harding, for those of you in New Zealand watching, was on our Sunday show 2 nights ago, and he talked about what happened at Dilworth School, and he's here now. So welcome to you, Neil.
Good morning.
Okay, that's it.
Oh, yeah,
No.
that's it. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
Yeah, so would you like me to sort of start and then it's probably, or do you want to start with the question?
Look, if it's easier for you, I'll start with a question. So if there are fellow ex-pupils of Neil's listening and watching, please feel free to share this widely, because what Neil has to offer will be of incredible value to you. So Neil, I guess initially from me to you, wow, roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
How did this all begin for you?
Really, I've thought about where the story probably picks up is Christmas Day 2017. I'd come back from, I live on Waiheke Island, I'd come back from Christmas with family in Auckland and found an Audi wedged in the fence of my front yard. A drunk driver had smashed into the fence. So locals had sort of found the driver, saw she was drunk, and obviously the right thing to do is to quickly take her home. So, so I was waiting out the front for the police to arrive to the scene, and in the meantime, unrelated, a car pulled up. I live on a roundabout. The passenger window was open. There was a young female in the late teens, early 20s, in the passenger seat. The next thing I see, the black barrel of a rifle come out through the window. I saw her in her eyes the decision to shoot me. She pointed the gun at me and pulled the trigger. I was probably about 10 feet away from her. There was an almighty bang, and in that moment I thought I was dead. It turned out it was a cap rifle, and she pulled up down the road and went into a party. So I rang the police again because it was just the most horrendous experience. It's hard to describe actually what went through my mind in that instant of hearing the gunshot, thinking I was dead, and then a split second later realizing I wasn't. So I contacted the police. Arrived, and the policeman said, "I will deal with the car first." And I said, "No, but the girl's down at this party down the road. You might want to go there." And he went down and came back. The girl didn't want to apologise. Obviously, he looked at the gun and thought, "You're kidding me." He probably looked at the stock and thought, "You're kidding. That's obviously a toy rifle." All I saw was the barrel pointed at me. And so he came back with, I was wanting an apology. He came back saying, the girl that pointed the toy gun at you, this is her phone number if you want an apology. So A couple of weeks later, I had a bit of a meltdown. I just started crying, and I went to the sergeant at the police station, and he explained why the judicial system had told police that they needed to treat things for what they were, not what I thought it was. So she wasn't in any trouble, and I wasn't a victim of crime. There wasn't ACC because it wasn't a crime, and it wasn't really an accident, or it didn't cover that. So I then sought some counselling, and in that counselling process, my counsellor, I've got a really good counsellor, she asked a question of, when else in your life have you not been validated by authorities? And I mentioned when I approached the police in 1997 about my experiences at Dilworth School and of sexual abuse, and the detective at the time said he wouldn't take a statement. He only would inform me that they were both known and convicted paedophiles, and that was the end of it. So then began the real counselling. I thought, look, if what happened to me isn't significant enough, it really has upset me, it's incomplete, it's unresolved, it hasn't been validated really by anybody, I would write a letter to the Dilworth Trust Board, and I would try and see if I could make the school safe now. If I knew the school was safe now, then that might be a way for me to find peace and healing. So I wrote a letter to the Trust Board asking them questions of their child safety policy and their pathway for dealing with historical abuse. I'd spent time on the board of my local high school. So I wrote this report as if I was a board member receiving it, knowing that they would need to take some action. So it took a year. They did then redo their child safety policy. They then did put in a pathway for dealing with historical abuse. At the time, I was working with the Trust Board general manager, the sort of PA to the chairman, I suppose. And there was this thing that I knew there was a code of silence at Dilworth. I wanted the historical abuse thing for them to know that it was survivor initiated, to try and break the code of silence. And there was a clear understanding. At the last minute, they decided to drop the survivor initiated bit and called it a proactive board initiative, because I think they thought that would look good. But then you go, well, why would you do all these things without any reason to do it? So it sort of didn't. And again, that sort of made me feel a little bit, it was a bit of a, but cheated, really. Yeah, so then the Royal, I did advise them too. I said, if the Royal Commission's coming, if they extend this to include faith-based institutions, you better get ready. And so I sort of had this crystal ball, because they did. And when it came time for the Royal Commission and they were asked questions, they were down the track only through my persistence. And so it was, at that time, I was starting to feel peace and healing. But I always had this nagging thing of, why did the housemaster, when I was a junior boy in the junior house, send me at night by myself to the scoutmaster's house where he molested me? And I couldn't come to terms with either his naivety, his incompetence, or his collusion. And I suspected the latter, that there was possibly a pedophile ring. And I had no idea the extent of sexual abuse at Dilworth. I just thought I was
the only one.
Isolated incident, yeah.
Yeah. So just before you carry on, you've raised several things that I think are really valuable to our audience out there, Neil. So I'm just going to take you through one, because I think this is really valuable for our survivors. You've now mentioned not one, not two, but three incidents where you have tried to bring something forward, and it's not a perception, it's a fact. It's being completely minimised.
Yeah.
To the point where for you to have tried again must have taken Herculean courage. So for our survivors out there, this is known to us. It is a tactical move, and it's designed to shut us down and shut us up. Yeah. So
yeah.
Neil, just in case you weren't aware, it was quite calculated. And that minimizing is something, unfortunately, that's projected onto us as survivors. We catch it and we carry it. And don't be surprised if people say to you, oh, was it really that bad?
Look, I have a lot of self-doubt, and the self-doubt was the fact that I was groomed. Now, I was sent to the Scoutmaster's house. He lay on a sheepskin rug and wanted me to tickle his tummy, and then said lower, lower, and started groaning and writhing. And suddenly at 11, I was innocent and I had no idea. And suddenly it was like, wait a second. And fortunately, I had the courage to, at that point, that's the courage I had was then, actually, in that moment, to actually stop and say, no, I don't want to. And I left in terror because I was in an environment where you weren't allowed to say no.
Yeah.
And me saying no to authority, what was the consequence of that? And this person that had been grooming me, had been providing safety for me, I thought was safe, was suddenly a threat.
Yes.
In that moment, it was terror that and you can say, okay, all that happened was that, but it's the terror and it's the context of the environment that I was in.
And I'm going to stop you again, because I think there's a few myths, and we, as survivors team watching, listening, we can't afford to buy into this myth. Let's be clear. Child sexual abuse is defined as any act where sexual gratification is gained for the adult. So let's be really clear. That is child sexual abuse. There was one aim and one aim only. So, Neil, we can't minimize this.
Exactly. And that is my message. And I don't want to sound like I'm minimizing myself.
No.
What happened to me. And there is a context to that gives me strength now to do this on behalf of the other Dilworth guys. I didn't get raped or sodomized. So that for me, it's like, okay, for me, it was less than what was for others. Guys, I will hold the flag. I will do this. And that's my attitude. And that's how I can find meaning, not just peace, but I wanted peace and healing. Now I'm moving into meaning, and I'm sure that you're probably finding that yourself, Gloria. Yeah. Suddenly your life has those experiences are giving you some meaning. You go, actually, I can now be defined not as by what happened to me, but what I'm doing now and helping others,
Absolutely. And we call it another name, I guess, Neil, which you'll quite like, is it's our purpose.
Yeah.
So it could be why we're here. But, the point is this, two things. One, huge credit to you for refinding the courage, actually, because remember, whenever our minds take us back to what happened, we almost feel as though we're back in the situation, and it's known to us survivors as flashbacks or triggers. So we're not coming from an adult, healed, safe point of view. We're transported right back into that young child at that time. So please know that. And I guess the second thing I want to say is this. Sometimes the fear of something happening is greater, or can feel greater and more terrifying than the impact once it's happened. So again, for holding the flag for those fabulous males out there that you are representing and speaking for, just be aware what they went through is horrendous, and also what you went through, because the fear was there.
Totally. And interestingly, that first experience probably saved me from my second experience, and that was the Reverend. he was grooming me as well. I didn't realise I was being groomed. You don't know you're being groomed until they act. He took me flying twice. He really liked me. He was the minister. He had a wife and young children. His role was pastoral care at the school. So one day he invited me to, I don't know, I can't remember how I got there, but I remember arriving into his home with him, speaking to his wife in the kitchen, and then he taking me to a room at in the back of the house, and I had to sit in the darkest corner of the room on the ground. He cross-legged. He sat cross-legged against me, his knees touching mine. I was trapped. Then he was wanting to pray with me or do something along those lines. That seemed a strange place to pray, but then he proceeded to place his left hand on my right knee and start moving it up towards my shorts. And all I remember is like a spring leaping to my feet. I can't remember whether I actually grabbed his hand or whether I just leapt to my feet. These are the things. Sometimes I know what happened, but there's little pieces missing. And the next thing, I'm out of there, passing his wife in the kitchen on the way out. And again, the terror of the other one that's been looking after me.
Wow.
Doing it. His nickname was, as we saw on the Sunday show, his nickname was Pumper Pete. And I thought that it was an unfair. I just thought it was just, kids calling someone names. I didn't realise it had something to it, and until that moment. And that's the only time I really have experienced shame, was the shame of being an idiot. Fortunately for me, I haven't experienced a lot of shame. And the terror of what happens now is just...
It's huge.
And what I came to learn was from a friend of mine in my dormitory of what happened to him in that same room, in that same situation, because he froze. And that was just, when I heard what happened to him, it was the most gut-wrenching experience. I had no idea that he intended to rape me in that room that day. I didn't know what was going to happen, but this friend of mine had experienced the most horrendous rape where he was, and I don't know whether we go into this.
Say whatever you feel, and thank you for sharing, because there's so many men out there who have gone through this at Dilworth, and advocating for them gives them some confidence and maybe a measure of it's not being minimised or disbelieved or shut down anymore. So it's quite...
Well, what I'm going to share, just be careful for people. So he was basically raped. Yeah. He got to sit and have chicken and chips with the family straight after that. Got taken back to the dormitory, got supervised having a shower, went to bed. In the morning, there was a lot of blood on his sheets. He went to the doctor, the school doctor. The doctor and the matron went into a little room, adjoining room, whisper, 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 came out and said he needed to eat more fibre, and wrote him a note. It really, really upset me. Yeah. And I have so much respect for this guy, because it actually devastated his life. The impact of that was just horrendous. But he's turned a corner, and he's doing really well.
It's huge.
So one of the other benefits, the benefits we have in having, I lead a class action of 129 survivors. There's another class action of 7. There's another class action of 20. And I know Dilworth have been approaching old boys to try and get them to go in direct for their redress program. We've had the benefit of numbers. And in terms of convictions, it's been, in terms of Operation Beverley that commenced.
Yeah,
we've seen justice, because we've had the quantity to hit to meet the threshold for prosecution.
Yeah. But you raise an interesting point, because why does it have to be the numbers? And this is what survivors face.
I know, I get that. And I know that's been your experience. And so the class action, I put boundaries in with the class action. We've got an incredible legal team, a QC, a barrister, 3 lawyers, a media consultant, a litigation funder.
Yes.
And they're all doing it pro bono. They will not be receiving anything from the settlement, and they have been working so hard. The thing that really got me the most with Dilworth was the discovery that the abuse was needless. When I discovered that boys before me had complained to the school and they'd been caned and punished and expelled, and no investigations carried out, they hadn't even moved the perpetrators along. And I realised that none of my abuse would have happened had the school acted.
Yeah.
And this is the message that I just don't think people understand. They're looking at, wow, so many pedophiles, and don't understand the tyranny and evil of the board and the senior. That's all I can call it. I mean, they sound like dramatic words.
That word's a dramatic. It's a silent endemic out there, Neil. And the reality is, it's you have to look at people's agenda, and we need to ask ourselves why do they want to cover this up? And complicit in or part of, you coined it earlier, that's a pedophile ring. You had at least 12, potentially more.
The police say there's 34, I think, pedophiles that they're aware of. A lot of them are deceased.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that is including senior boys or boy on boy.
Yep.
But that's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
The thing with Dilworth, and the thing that really irritates me now, is what was needless then. The board have been putting me through the ringer for 4 years, and it's needless now. You know, the behaviour of the current board and not being open and upfront about it. They're saying they're being open and honest. They've been incredibly duplicitous. They're saying one thing, doing another. That, you know, 4 years ago, they could have done an inquiry. They could have announced an inquiry. I've been asking them for years questions of the school's accountability. They just refuse to acknowledge the question. And that was the same thing with the Sunday program. They gave them 16 questions, and all they did was wrote one paragraph and cherry-picked their response. And they left the questions out that I said, good luck if you get an answer on these questions.
Yeah.
So what they're wanting to do is
I guess my and I always come back to, I ask myself why. And either the cover-up is designed to keep other people protected, which has happened, or they're wanting money. So again, it's money, or it's injustice over people, paper over people, money over people. And of course, this happened when you were all children. And as we can see throughout, you look at Gloria Vale still existing today, Neil, and the state, other commissions of inquiry that are done into Lake Alice, Maryvale. Just do some research. Fabulous commissions of inquiry, zero change.
Yeah.
And it's just, I just ask myself why.
I know there's people that are being protected. I know that they're concerned about the money. And it's worked for them for 50 to 60 years. I mean, they said 30 years on the Sunday program because that's all we have convicted for, but we know that this started in the late 50s. It began then, and it really hit its peak in the 70s. It's hard to find the words to describe why the board in 2022 are thinking that this is the right way to proceed. What they want to do is put in a redress process. They've now announced an independent inquiry. I think the board don't want to throw anyone under the bus. So, I mean, this is just me speculating, so I've got to be careful what I'm saying, I suppose. But they are announcing an independent inquiry, but they're wanting to do a redress proposal and get that through and done before the results of the independent inquiry. Now, you look at that and they're controlling the process, and we're saying it needs to be survivor focused. You need to see what are the needs of the survivors, and they just are ignoring that and going, no, this is how it's going to work. Sit down, shut up, like we were when we were at school. This is how it's going to work. Yep. This is the cap. We're going to put a cap on it. We've put a value on your life and the damage to your life. We think you are only worth this. And that is fairly traumatizing, re-traumatizing from a survivor perspective. What they're doing is inherently wrong. They're not listening to the advice that we're giving them. They're obviously not listening to their professional advice from the people they have.
No.
I imagine their professionals are telling them that this is the right way to deal with survivors. And so they want to put a financial cap, get everyone paid up, and when the independent inquiry shows how complicit the school is, they can say, "Oh yeah, sorry about that. We've already paid you out." And it's just a ploy that we can see straight through.
Yeah.
But they're putting an incredible duress on me as the lead survivor, as the lead claimant, to sign off a financial cap, which inherently is completely wrong. And it's and the cap is moving. It's sort of, initially we were only worth 80,000. Now the cap's moving, and there's confidentiality around what that cap is.
The interesting thing is, Neil, isn't it interesting? We, as survivors of child sexual abuse, your rights, your power, your voice was stripped away, actually. Now as adults trying to get redress, the same thing is happening. A different raincoat, but same things. Shut you down, keep you quiet, stop making a fuss. And it takes enormous fortitude and courage actually to continue, and that perseverance must be incredible to find. So thank you.
9 of the guys have committed suicide that I was at school with.
Yeah.
That were sexually abused. So I mean, it's not courage required. I can't know that and go to my grave without doing something about that.
Yeah.
And I owe those guys something,
Yeah. And there are other people who potentially know that. So take the win, because it's real. I think I hear what you're saying. The real concern is that, or I guess my challenge to deal with is, what would be so difficult about letting survivors lead the charge? For 2 reasons. 1, survivors are eminently honest. 2, very fair, I would suspect. So although if you got a group together and had a committee as survivors of Dilworth and came up with a figure, I'm sure it would be reasonable, or what you felt it was worth. So again, the disservice is gobsmacking, frankly.
Well, the abuse continues.
Yes,
it's abuse. Really, it's maybe that's over the top, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, I know it's not.
I feel that the invalidation, all those issues. What we haven't talked about is Dilworth, and how it's New Zealand's wealthiest private school that has over $1 billion in assets, that's dedicated to helping boys from vulnerable boys from difficult circumstances. So we all arrive at Dilworth damaged.
Yeah.
And that's part of the issue, is that it's just on top of other things that have happened in our lives.
Well, it's almost easy prey, easy pickings, isn't it? If you're a paedophile and you're looking for
That was the place to be.
yeah, the young boys to groom, and it's going to be a challenging time ahead. And I think you mentioned about 9 beautiful souls having ended their lives because of this, and I suspect this won't surprise you, but over 50% of suicides in our country can be directly linked to childhood trauma, specifically child sexual abuse. What do you make of that?
Oh, look, how do you know? I mean, the numbers.
But
when not everyone comes forward, how do you ever really know?
yeah,
we just know that it's, as you say, it's a silent epidemic. It really is, and it's about, a trigger word for me is closure. I don't like the word closure. I mean, and I'm a health professional, I'm a chiropractor. I have a special interest in pediatrics. Understanding the nervous system, understanding the trauma to children and how it affects their wiring. These kids are just they're irreparably damaged. People say, oh, look, it can, if in terms of redress, to say, well, it affected their career, and you go, well, what was their career? What were they going to be when they were 11? They didn't even work that out yet. And for a lot of them, life is, they go into a sympathetic fight and flight. Survival is as good as it's ever going to be for them.
Yeah.
They're completely derailed. Can you please keep that closer? Oh, sorry.
It's also, that those 4 trauma responses is fight, flight, freeze, and fawn is one. I was the queen of fawn, so I recognise it. But the reality is for these people, just look in our prisons and look at our addiction rates. We have over 95% of addiction is linked back to childhood trauma, specifically child sexual abuse. So these numbers are not made up or thought about. They are done through statistical empirical study. And until we start to really peel these layers back, I believe, Neil, and work with people around the education of it, the silence is deafening.
Yeah, well, for me, it's just this organisation needs to be called out, and that's really what it's about. I'm 2 people. In my counselling journey, I have found that I'm parenting my child self.
Yes.
My child is quite proud of the parent.
Yeah.
That's doing this.
Yeah.
I'm happy. I'm a father. I'm a grandfather. I'm parenting my child self, and so my life now is about being kind to my inner child.
Yeah.
And getting some justice.
Absolutely.
That there's some words now that my counsellor brings out packs of words. I don't know if you've seen those, of different words, and that for me, it's life is really about honesty. It's about kindness.
Yeah.
It's about authenticity and reciprocity. And reciprocity is interesting. Emotional reciprocity for me is really, really important now. My life of being not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy, not trying to be liked, all those sorts of things, I'm finding that having some emotional reciprocity is really important.
Yeah.
To give me balance. And so it's interesting as I do this work. It's I'm discovering more who I am through this as well.
And that's just amazing, and that's the gift ahead, eh? And that self-love and that self-compassion is crucial, because we've been conditioned to not actually do that or feel that. So as adults to then swivel it back round and flip it on its head and say, actually, I do need to honour me, I do need to love who I am today, can be a real challenge for survivors and for our wonderful audience out there. Don't be afraid to put you first, because we can't give from an empty tank. If you're not filled up in some way, it's almost impossible to give to others.
Well, I think trying to parent yourself is possibly, that was a really good start for me. So I don't know if that's a cue for others out there.
Yeah.
Okay, if you've been a parent, you go, okay, try parenting yourself. And that feels weird because I'm now split in two. There's me the child and me the adult.
But that's beautiful, and the integration is happening, and it will become more and more clear. I thought too about what you just said, and it brings me to a question. Did you have was your mum around you? Imagine it. You may not have had a dad or a stepdad, or did you have support from your family? Not your partner necessarily. I realised Teresa was there. But
I've had incredible support from my children.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
fantastic.
There's been a price, with all these things, often a price.
Yeah.
I have changed.
Yeah.
And I suppose I don't want to go too much into my family. I don't want to go into in this forum.
Sure.
But,
that's fine.
There's been a price, and relationships with my family, and that's okay. It's like I choose myself. I choose my child. The abandonment and rejection I had then, I've experienced again as an adult, and this is where it's like, okay, time for me to parent me, and I choose me.
Yeah, fantastic.
And I'm doing it with kindness. I'm not doing it with blame. That people think it. Obviously, I've been blaming the family, and I've been angry, and I've been this, and I've been that. It's been none of those things.
No.
And I think kindness is a really important word. And I'm trying to use kindness even to the trust board. I'm trying to remain calm and considered, and but obviously, that's not working. But that's me, and I'll continue to try and be that.
With gentleness and respect, Neil, their agenda is not your agenda.
No, and I don't think if I was angry it would make any difference either.
No.
I think they'd be entrenched in doing the wrong thing. And and I think there might be an opportunity for me to, I might need to write this. I might need to analyse this and put this into writing in terms of organisational response and guiding organisations on proper process, because this is a case study on abject failure of Dilworth, of what they did then, and abject failure of what the Trust Board are doing now. And if any of them are listening, they need to know that they have failed miserably and can fail miserably, and it's not good enough.
No.
And credit, what I'd like to do also is acknowledge those that have come before me. We've got the Me Too and the Men Too and all this, and the timing, all the work and the persistence of people that have gone before has allowed society to create that shift where this time I've been heard,
Yeah.
At the Royal Commission I was heard.
Yes. I watched that, yes.
Great media. I managed to, the Scoutmaster we managed to put in prison last year in March. That was interesting. Have I got time to still?
Absolutely.
Cool. So one of the biggest hurdles I had was when under Operation Beverley, they charged the Scoutmaster for the incident on the rug, and there were 5 of us. Because it's child sexual abuse, I had automatic name suppression. And I'd already had my name suppression lifted for the Royal Commission, but when I approached his sentencing, I had to seek permission from the judge to get my name suppression lifted. And it was a bit of a trigger. It's like, hey, I haven't had a voice. Now I've got a voice. and now one man gets to decide whether I'm allowed to have a voice. I went to the sentencing of one of my abusers, waiting for my verdict if I was going to be allowed to have my name suppression lifted. And I found that really, really tough. And so 5 minutes before we went in for the hearing, the Crown prosecutor took me to one side in a room and said the judge has agreed to lift my automatic name suppression. And I had to write that. I found this out at the last minute. And on the weekend before, I'd spent 4 hours writing this pleading letter, desperate to get my name suppression lifted, to allow myself to have a voice.
Yeah.
And in the end, it was successful. So it was 5 minutes before the hearing that I was able to go there with a bit of peace and go, okay, well, I've got my verdict. Now I can attend sentencing. So I'm not sure how that is dealt with. I appreciate we need to protect children and their anonymity, but maybe it shouldn't be that hard to.
I agree with you. I like the fact it's there, but equally, it should be a 5-minute phone call or email. I'm requesting this to be lifted. You had no power as a child of this, and as an adult, it shouldn't be this hard. Unfortunately, another.
Or
no,
that was. So I had the media all there. I had the Herald. They'd done 2 articles. They'd done one version with me not getting my name suppression lifted. They had one version with my name suppression lifted. And as I came out of that room, I gave a thumbs up to the Herald reporter so she knew what version to use.
It shouldn't be that hard, Neil.
Yes. So, these are some of the pitfalls, the hurdles.
Yeah.
There's hurdles in this.
Huge.
Last week, he, after a third of his sentence, he automatically comes up for a parole hearing. So I wrote a 4-page letter submission to the parole board, which I read, and fortunately he was he's still in prison. That's again a difficult process.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because he's been found guilty, he's been charged, and what perhaps people in audience out there, you'll respect this and recognise this. We carry the life sentence for what was done, not willingly. It's just what it is. It comes in the form of self-doubt or never enough, or should I even try? It's a huge sentence we carry. These paedophiles get X amount of years and then the sentence gets reduced and they get out on parole. So I think the justice system is not always seen as justice.
Certainly. And one of my big point to the parole board was the discounts. I watched, there were 5 of us. One of the boys got 7 years, 4 years, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 14 years. But with concurrent sentencing, he got the worst of us, which was 7 years. The judge said, I will make it 6.5. I don't know why he took 6 months off. Then he got 25% for his guilty plea. I'm happy with that because the guilty plea meant everything to me. Him acknowledging that he did it was worth 25%. But he got sentenced for what the law was at the time, back in the 70s, which was more lenient than it is today. He then got 20% discount because he's now old and unwell. And you're going, well, he wasn't old and unwell then. If you're going to use the 20% discount, maybe he needs to be charged for today and give him the discount. So he had his cake and ate it too. Then there was no upliftment for the other 4 of us. So I got the sense walking out, I didn't need to be there. It might as well just been the guy that got the 7 years. He just got sentenced for him. And we got nothing. There was no additional for the fact there were 4 others of us. And then after a third of a sentence, they're looking to release him. And I'm going, it's just discount, it's discount, it's discount, it's no upliftment. And now they're looking to let him out. And I get no discount. We get no discount.
Oh, we carry it. We'll keep carrying it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And I guess one of the things I wanted to ask you is what has helped you on your journey? I'm just thinking through if there's Dilworth listeners or other male survivors out there. Welcome, guys. We're lucky to have Neil with us today. Neil, what are some of the things you've done to help move you through on your journey of recovery? I know you've talked about therapy. Is there anything else you kind of feel has helped?
It's a desire. It's many things. I'm a father. I'm a grandfather. I've got 2 young grandsons, and I'm going, well, this is my gift to my grandsons, is to try and make their world safe. It's a gift to my child self. I'm a health professional that has, we have standards and
do no harm.
Do no harm. I've done a lot of coaching of young boys in sport and cricket and squash and football. I've worked with young boys, and the big thing for me is emotional and physical safety. I'm deeply coaching kids, 7 through to 15, and sexual safety isn't part of my thing, because it shouldn't be.
No.
It's safe, but it shouldn't be a listed thing as I need to make sure that these 7-year-olds are sexually safe. But through bringing in principles of emotional and physical safety, and it's a lot of my healing has come through being able to provide safe environments and mentoring other young kids, and they've got no idea of what it means to me to have them in a safe environment.
That's so lovely.
And
it's so validating, isn't it?
And I hope they never kind of get to understand. And it's probably good that they don't know.
Yeah.
That they can just go through and have that innocence, and their innocence is preserved, and not know that the effort I was making was trying to make right something that I didn't have.
Yeah.
And then the others, the guys that are just really that are deceased, the guys that have been derailed, the guys that aren't as equipped. And I don't mean that to sound arrogant, but that I may not be as equipped to stand up. And I look at it's whether I'm waving the flag or a pathfinder. I look at myself as a pathfinder. The pathfinder bombers were the ones that went through and dropped the bombs and first, or lit the flares to guide the other bombers where to drop the bombs. So I see myself as in that kind of role. And I'm copping a lot of flack, and hopefully I take the flack, and the others that come behind me can just come through unscathed.
How can we help you? How can there's a lot of us, as I said, the police tell me one report is up to 1 in 3 in New Zealand. How can we as a survivor community stand with you and support you, Neil? What would you like from us?
We've got to put pressure on these organisations to expose the cover-ups.
Yeah.
And banding together. I mean, the thing about fellow survivors is we understand
we get it.
That doesn't need to be discussed. And I look at that, and I look at the guys that came back from the wars, the world wars, and they went to the RSA, and I think they just sat, and I don't think they needed to describe their experiences. And I'm not, obviously it's different, but it's in a similar theme of there's things that don't need to be said. And there's a brotherhood of survivors, of Dilworth survivors. I only know who about 10 of them are out of the 157. They're the ones I speak to. I need to protect myself. I can't be communicating directly with all of them because I need to. I'm blinkered, and I've got a job to do.
Yeah.
There's others that are supporting me by setting up Facebook groups for survivors.
Absolutely.
And I communicate with them, and we've got this thing of, okay, you You do
You
that.
do that and I'll do this. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I kind of see what you're saying. So I just want to give you this. I think you'll quite like this. Over 70% of PTSD sufferers, most people assume are Vietnam vets or war vets. Wrong. Over 70% are people like you, me, other survivors who have experienced child sexual abuse. And yet, we are not given a medal. We were not trained for this combat. We are not applauded. We are not put on pedestals. We are not thanked. Do you see the difference here, Neil?
Totally. And all we've got, we've got ourselves, and I look at stress. Stress is an engineering term. And they talk of vulnerability and resilience.
Yeah.
But they're two power words for me. Obviously I have vulnerabilities. And if I focus too much on my vulnerabilities, I miss my resilience. And the stress that I've been through has created resilience. When I'm good, when the shit goes down, I can cope quite well, Try living a normal when things are going well, that's when my vulnerabilities probably emerge. But my resilience is there when the times are tough. And that's why we're survivors, we have resilience. And so we got to really just be kind to ourselves and look at the resilience. I went through a really bad divorce when I was 40 and lost my children emotionally and physically. They got taken out of New Zealand and turned against me. And it was in that moment I realized that my Dilworth experience had served me for that moment. And in that moment, I was almost thanking what had happened to me at Dilworth that allowed me to survive the loss of my children. And that went on for about 10 years. They're back in my life now, big time, which is good. But that was tough, and that nearly, if anything, could have finished me off.
That would have been it.
That was close, really. But there was this commitment to myself, though. I don't think it was close. I mean, it felt close, but
no, you wouldn't have been able to potentially.
No.
But you raise an interesting point. Vulnerability is such a gift, and I know it because often I'm out across LinkedIn and a lot of platforms talking every day like this and exposing what goes on and encouraging people to feel safe enough to be heard. But it requires a measure of vulnerability. But I know this, people like to have vulnerability exposed, because what we don't realize, Neil, is flip the mirror around, it gives them permission. So you get people, I get people across the world reaching out, a lot of them men, and saying, look, I haven't told anyone, my wife's the only one that knows, and I just saw your interview, or blah, blah, and it's just given me a bit of confidence, actually, to maybe speak. So I think vulnerability can be used. It's not a lesser than resilience. In fact, being vulnerable takes huge amounts of courage.
Totally. And we are both, and we need to understand that it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah. So I'm not saying we need to be miserable and emotionally unstable. I am saying that at times throughout our journey we will have experienced that, and that sometimes it will shoulder tap, or we don't need to talk about what people go through necessarily, but there is power in releasing it from inside us. And I think for some of our wonderful survivors out there watching, if you haven't found that yet, there's many different ways of releasing it from within you. It may be talking, it may be writing, it may be drawing, it may be doing some sort of martial art. there is no definitive one size fits all. In this journey, we're all unique, and we support you and stand beside you. You will always be believed. And I think that's really powerful, Neil. Is there anything you would recommend just as we're moving to, I'm not going to say close out. What's that word you hate?
Closure.
Closure. We're not saying closure, but as we move towards the end, is there anything you would recommend or suggest for fellow survivors out there who may not have come forward and be part of this class action? Anything you would...
Trust their instincts.
Trust your instincts. Oh, I like that. I'm going to steal that one.
Yeah, just trust your instincts.
Yeah.
And when the time's right, it'll be right. Don't force it.
Yeah, love it.
Don't just be gentle and kind, and opportunities may present. And you just have to trust your instincts as to whether this is it feels safe. It's about safety.
Yeah.
And safety of spirit.
Yeah. Absolutely. We're multi-dimensional, aren't we, Neil?
Yep.
Well, look, I'm offering this platform to you anytime, Neil. Anytime you would like to update or share some more pearls of wisdom. Shock, horror, there were pearls of wisdom. Anytime you would like to do that, it would be my pleasure to host you on the show. As far as I know, I'm the only one in New Zealand doing this, but I think it's really important we have a platform for survivors. And yeah. So could you just stay on the line, please? And I'll just close out with everyone. So, hey, survivors, weren't we lucky to have Neil with us today? Hasn't he done a great job in sharing what's happening and listening to what he suggests? You know, the most powerful thing for me, well, there's a few actually, the vulnerability and resilience are key, but also trusting your instincts. So go well, everyone. As with all of these shows, you believed, stand beside you, support you, and you're never alone. So have a great week until next time.